friends from all over the world. I always feel weird saying friends since some of you I don't even know. However, I do feel that we're a little community together here trying to find our place in this multicultural world. So, hi there, wherever you're listening from. Welcome to episode 51 of the Getting Married Multiculturally podcast. Today, I have a very, very special episode for you. I've put together something that I never did before. And like I've mentioned at the end of my episode last week, I wanted this to be a surprise. So, as you have seen from the title, we will be talking about holiday celebrations from all over the world. And since these cultural festivities are often surrounded by gifts and surprises, so as we get closer to Christmas, I wanted this to be my special present to you, and I hope that you will find it just as special as I did. I have invited 7 amazing guests from different cultures to participate in this holiday episode and share their blended, mixed, combined, however you want to call it, holiday experiences and journeys. And they have all pre-recorded in about 10-minute long talk about their traditions. And I'm going to play these for you. I am going to also comment after each segment to give you a little space between each guest and give you a little input that I have. So, first, you will hear from Mary, who is Canadian Chinese, talking about her experiences as living in a country that mainly celebrates Christmas. And as somebody who grew up in a Chinese culture and doesn't celebrate Christmas, she feels pretty confident to teach her daughter that just because everybody else is doing something doesn't mean that we have to follow. So instead of Christmas, we are going to hear her talk about Chinese New Year's Eve celebration. And my second guest, or I should say guests, are Cheres and Mahe, an Indian American couple talking about their Christmas and the Diwali celebration and how they combine these two holidays together in their household. And after them, I have Lolita, who is originally from Uzbekistan. She spent 4 years in Israel before moving to the States. So I invited her to talk about the Jewish holiday Hanukkah, and she is also sharing a little bit about the New Year celebration in Russia. After Lolita, you can listen Petronella's story about her journey from Uganda to the States and how the constant moving with her family shaped the way they celebrate Christmas. My next guest is going to be Nivea, who was born in South India but moved to the States when she was only a year old. So she's going to tell us about the holidays that she grew up celebrating and how they transformed over the years, and also how she has seen the other side of these traditions once she started dating someone from outside of her culture, her religion, and ethnicity. Then you will hear from Anissa. You may also know her as Expat Panda, who is from South Africa, currently living in the Middle East. So I invited her to talk about Eid and her journey celebrating different holidays with her Christian partner. My last but not least guest is going to be Diana from Romania, or Diana. I think she goes by Diana. She is one of my friends here in Arizona, and Diana will be sharing her Orthodox Christmas traditions and how she adopted some of the American holidays over the years. All right, so I want to tell you a little bit about how I structured this episode. Between each guest, I'm going to talk about the similarities I noticed, a story that I remembered, or whatever comes in my mind that I'd like to comment about or share my opinion about, add my 20 cent to it. I think that's how you say this. Because, I can't put a holiday tradition collection together without mentioning my Hungarian celebrations or how we blended them with the American Christmas. However, I don't really want this to take up too much time. So, actually, last year I had a solo episode where I talked more in depth about our holiday traditions. So, if you are interested about that and you would like to listen to it, just you can find it under episode 9. It's titled How We Blend Different Holiday Traditions Together. So now let's hear from Mary's holiday traditions.
Hi, my name's Mary Chan. I'm Canadian Chinese. So I was born in Vancouver, Canada, but my parents are actually from Hong Kong and China, and they immigrated here back in the 70s. I currently live a ferry ride away from Vancouver, where I grew up, in a city called Victoria, BC. We're on an island. And when we originally moved here in 2003, it was for a radio job. So I worked in radio for about 20 years. I made commercials and was a voiceover artist. And then I got downsized from the company. So I actually have my own podcast production company now. And I help women entrepreneurs and women led organizations create podcasts. So also, then I do have my own podcast. It's called The Homestay Kitchen, and it is a podcast for homestay families that host international students that study abroad. So I love talking about culture too through my experiences of hosting international students. My family doesn't celebrate Christmas or any other winter holiday, but my partner's family, we're common law. My partner's family does celebrate Christmas to an extent, but we've just never really wanted to pick it up when we got together and started our relationship. But growing up, I remember my mom trying to integrate us into the Canadian lifestyle. So her whole mindset was that you're born in Canada, you're Canadian, you need to know this, whatever culture this is, which is going to be different from how she grew up. And so I guess she had heard that you're supposed to have a Christmas tree and put up decorations. So I remember being young. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. And in school, they taught us all about the holidays, right? The different things that happen and Santa and all this stuff. And I always thought that Santa wasn't real. I had that in my mind that it couldn't be plausible. And our house never had a fireplace. So I always thought, well, I don't have a chimney, I don't have a fireplace. Santa's never going to come to my house anyway. However, my mom one year decided to go and buy an artificial Christmas tree. So we were all excited. We put up the tree, put up the ornaments, put up some extra decorations around the house. And I thought, oh my gosh, now that we have a tree, maybe Santa will come. And I just remember being a little excited, a little apprehensive, and trying to stay up late to see if I could see him. And my mom getting so mad at me for staying up late because I'm not supposed to, being such a young kid, and she didn't know why. And then the next morning, I woke up early and ran downstairs to find nothing has changed. That my mom did the Christmas tree part, but there were no presents under the tree. We didn't celebrate Christmas that way. So my mom worked like 3 jobs, so she couldn't really afford presents even if she knew she was supposed to put presents under the tree. Does that make sense? So that's one of my memories of Christmas in my household, because we never celebrated Christmas and we never got presents under the tree. I was upset, but I was like, "Oh my god, I knew Santa wasn't real." Well, obviously, so that really hit it home. And now our holiday traditions are different because I now have a 4-year-old, and we go to Vancouver to visit both of our families. However, it's great since my parents don't celebrate Christmas. We do all the Christmassy things with his side of the family. So he's got a brother and his parents, and they still put up a tree and do presents. They give us presents, but they know that we don't celebrate Christmas, so we don't usually give them presents, and they're okay with it. And we now tell our daughter, like, this is not what we do for Christmas. Some families do this, other families do different things. Some families don't celebrate Christmas. So we're just trying to teach her all about the different cultures. And so we tell her that yes, your nana and your uncles on your dad's side will give you some presents because that's what they want to do. However, that doesn't mean that you'll get it from everybody or my side of the family or that this is a thing that's going to happen every single time. So just letting her know that there are differences in different families and different families do different things. I'm the black sheep of the family. I didn't like following rules, and I always thought there would be an alternative for different things, and so any holiday, I felt like it was put upon us and created for commercialization, marketing, that sort of stuff. So Christmas and Valentine's Day, Easter, like these sort of things just felt like we were told we should be buying presents. We should be doing these things, and I just never wanted to, and also because we don't have that religious tie to any of those cultures, that it just wasn't in me. We didn't do it. And so when I found my partner, he kind of had the same feeling, and so that's what we have continued to do with, our kid. So my partner's, family, his dad is Ukrainian Canadian, also born in Canada, but I think his family immigrated here quite a while ago. Anyway, so his dad still loves the Ukrainian Christmas. So they do a lot of their traditions on Christmas Eve. They get to open one present on Christmas Eve. They have a lot of special foods like kuchia, which is wheat berries with poppy seeds and honey. And they always eat that as an appetizer. And then they have pierogies. So in Ukrainian, it's actually perehe. And they would stuff them with cottage cheese and potato, or they would do a sweet version with just poppy seeds and like maple syrup kind of sweetness to it. So that's what I've sort of celebrated Christmas with them. Otherwise, I never really did celebrate much with my side of the family, as I've already said. But now, I guess what we like to do is we tell our daughter that Christmas is about being with your family and eating a lot of good food. And so a lot of our traditions are going to Vancouver, taking that trip over, seeing both sides of the family, and just eating a lot of good food. His mom also likes to make a turkey on Christmas Day. So we have that too. And then his side of the family will all make side dishes and create this big meal. So it's all about spending time with family and eating a lot of good food. My least favorite part is all the traveling, but it's not that bad actually. We have a ferry that we takes us over there, and it's not too bad, but it's now with the 4-year-old, it's just a matter of making sure you're packing everything and getting her ready and all her things that she needs. So I guess it's not bad. I don't really have a least favorite thing, I suppose. But again, back to the favorite part of the holidays, it's all about the food. I love exploring new food, different cultures of food, and trying a whole bunch of new things. So that's what we like. Yeah, coworkers were always fascinated by the fact that I never celebrated Christmas. I remember growing up and being like the token Chinese person in the workplace. They would ask me about Chinese New Year, right? And I would not have much to add to Christmas except that, yeah, I'm glad I get this time off because it's a holiday for everyone. It's a stat holiday. And I get to go and eat some good food. But I don't have to deal with, oh, I need to buy presents. I need to set up the tree. I need to do this and that and see all these people and the headache that I hear from everybody. That actually might be my favorite part of the holidays. But they are quite open to learning about what I would call Christmas for me is Chinese New Year, which moves around every year based on the lunar calendar. So it could be in January or February. But that is really my Christmas. That's my winter holiday. Growing up, we always got little lucky red envelopes with money. We had to wear new clothes. We got new underwear and socks. Pajamas was one of my favorite things. You wear red or gold. Red is the lucky color. You don't wear white because that's for funerals. So many traditions and superstitions that go along with Chinese New Year. I guess it is like a winter holiday because it's still winter time, but I just never think of it being a winter holiday because it's not around the December holiday tradition season. But yeah, I guess winter holiday would be my Chinese New Year. I love that. And we always have a big feast with my family. We have like 8 or 9 dishes that we make and cook, and we have like a whole chicken, pork, a whole fish, rice. We make a special soup. We make these little dumplings. We have sweets. Like there's just so much involved with food. And now we impart that with my 4-year-old and all her cousins on my family side. And we all get together and celebrate Chinese New Year. I love that. That's my favorite. It's not about the lucky red envelope and the money, but again, it is like Christmas with my partner's family. It's about the family and the food and the interaction and experiencing a family together. Advice for multicultural couples: own it. Whatever you want to do to impart in a tradition or culture for your family, do it. It doesn't matter what other people think. You can open their eyes to differences and different cultures and seeing a different way of living, which isn't bad or good. It's just different. And being different, again, isn't bad or good. It's just another way of being. And people shouldn't be shy about saying, you know what? I don't celebrate Christmas. Oh, no, that's not my thing. My kid doesn't believe in Santa Claus. People shouldn't be afraid to say those things. And I find I do have to walk the fine line because I don't want to ruin Christmas for other children. But to adults, you should not be afraid of sharing what you do and doing things differently that isn't second nature or traditional to somebody else. And I find too, sometimes then people take on some of the things that I would impart and they learn. And I learn too. Like some people also don't celebrate Christmas. And I'm like, oh, I just kind of assumed, but people shouldn't be assuming of everybody, right? So I think just everyone should be speaking up. Anyway, I hope that helps. You can find me at Organized Sound Productions on Instagram or also on my webpage at organizedsound.ca. And organized has a Z, and I say Z, not Z, because I'm Canadian. Okay, thanks. And I hope this was helpful for you.
Okay, I can definitely tell that Mary is a voiceover artist because this was so enjoyable to listen and engaging. And a couple of things I wanted to comment on is that I really love that Mary didn't pick up on the holidays that the country celebrates where she lives. I think it says a lot about who she is and where she stands when it comes to traditions and holidays. And it definitely makes it easier if you have two families who celebrate different traditions. It's easier for the kids to explain them that okay, this is what we're doing with this family and this is what we're doing with this other family, and we don't necessarily have to mix them together. Especially when it comes to giving presents to each other, because I, for example, often feel the pressure of giving somebody a present just because I received it for whatever reason they felt like they wanted to surprise me with a gift or because it's a holiday. And I love that Mary still sticks to her traditions and her beliefs. And I also wanted to mention that similar to Ukrainian traditions that Mary has mentioned, we also open presents on Christmas Eve because Hungarian traditions believes that Jesus brings presents for the children on Christmas Eve. And I completely relate to you being worried and trying to be sensitive around other children so you don't, you know, your daughter doesn't believe in Santa, and but you want to be make sure that other kids, that this doesn't get ruined for other kids around you. And I find the difficulty with telling my children my beliefs that Jesus brings presents on Christmas Eve, because Santa is so commercialized in America that pretty much all the children believe that Santa brings the present. It doesn't matter how many times I tell them something else. That's just what they see. That's just what they hear. So I feel your struggle. And you said that your daughter is 4 years old, and I know that this is just gonna get more challenging over the years. But I really enjoyed listening the Chinese New Year, and I looked it up, Googled it, and the 2020 will be January 25th. If any of you are interested about, it is going to be a year of the rat. Okay, now let's hear from Cheris and Mahi, an Indian American couple, talking about their Christmas and Diwali celebration.
Hi, my name's Cheris. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. I'm an American, now living in San Francisco with my husband, and I'm an artist. I specialize in commissions of paintings and drawings for my clients, and it is called Whispers Studio.
And hey, this is Mahesh Naidu here, and as Charis mentioned, we live in San Francisco, California now. I am an Indian and I was born and raised in Pune and Bangalore in India. And I am an engineer working with a big software company in the Bay Area.
Today, we're going to speak about Christmas and Diwali. I celebrated Christmas growing up in the US. My favorite memory would have to be the time that we first got our puppy the first year when she was 9 months old. And what happened was we had the Christmas tree set up, and she was fascinated with the tree. She always wanted to drink the water from underneath, as well as trying to pull the needles off of the tree and stealing ornaments off of it. Well, one day she learned the hard way. She decided on Christmas Day that she wanted to clamp her mouth down on one of the branches to pull the needles off. Well, that didn't go as she had expected. The entire tree came tumbling down, water spilling, and one ornament was the only thing that fell off the tree, while my dog ran under the table with her tail between her legs. And when we all started laughing about the tree falling over, seeing that nothing had broken, she came back out with this look on her face of puppy eyes and her tail between her legs as it wagged, and she understood that we weren't really angry at her. But she did learn her lesson to never touch the tree again in all her 15 years of growing up with us.
My favorite festival growing up in India was definitely Diwali. Diwali is something we compare to Christmas here in the US, where we buy a lot of new clothes for our family. So our parents brought us a lot of new clothes during Diwali, and Diwali, unlike Christmas, is celebrated over a period of 4 to some places a week. We celebrated this over 3 to 4 days, and we got a lot of new clothes, a lot of festivities, which involved making a lot of homemade sweets gifted to you by your neighbors and your family. Most importantly, the firecrackers. This was anything that we remember Diwali for, was the firecrackers. We had this elaborate collection of huge boxes of firecrackers which would go off days unending between me and my brother, and that was the best memory that I can remember of as far as Diwali from back home in India is concerned.
Since I married my husband, we still kept Christmas going, but we also celebrate Diwali, since I thought this was an incredible festival, and I'm definitely embracing every aspect that when it comes to the Indian culture. I'm fascinated with everything there is, and Diwali has a great history as well as the celebration to it.
Growing up, since I was in Catholic schools, I always celebrated Christmas, but it's a little more special here in the United States. Also, seeing that I'm married to a Christian now, so we celebrate Christmas as well as Diwali. For me, Christmas is even more special here compared to India, because we actually do a lot of gift giving as well as celebrate with decorating our house with a bunch of lights in every room possible, as well as the outdoor deck. And the tree is the special surprise. We every year deck it up and go all out.
So we actually have a video on YouTube that we started to discuss about Diwali, because this is a festival that a lot of my friends ask as well, and I learned a lot from the process of making this video, not only about the tradition of Christmas, but as well as Diwali. So Diwali actually translates to the row of lights, and on Diwali they celebrate by lighting a row of diyas. Diyas means lights in Hindi. So what they'll do is they'll put oil lamps outside their doors, and there's so many stories behind all these traditions. There's a lot of religions in India that actually celebrate this from the beginning of time. There's actually no way of actually tracing how far back Diwali goes or when it actually started. It could be because of a harvest or the belief of the stories that are told, such as gods that are protecting and outcasting things of evil, because it's good versus evil within the stories, as well as celebrating the day of Lakshmi, which is the third day in Diwali, which is when most of the fireworks are set off, as well as the praise for the goddess is done.
And Lakshmi, as she mentioned, is the goddess of money and wealth. So that is where most of people celebrate and have the biggest celebration of all the days of Diwali. And we celebrate and cherish and give offerings to the goddess for for having a prosperous year ahead.
And as we said, there's many religions that celebrate this within India, so each region actually has its own story behind it, stories and legends, and it's actually really fascinating if you look into the history of how it started, what the stories are behind Diwali, as well as how other places celebrate it. So, Diwali in comparison to Christmas is very similar when it comes to the gifts, but growing up here in America, I had the pleasure of having a white Christmas most years because I lived up in the northern end of the US, so we had a lot of snow. Not compared to Boston, which gets a lot more snow than Pennsylvania. So, in Christmas, often we'd have Christmas Eve celebration. In my family, we had two Christmases because of outside family. Our relatives lived really far away. So we would often do our main Christmas at home, which is, of course, going to bed, waiting for Santa Claus to stuff our stockings full of gifts, as well as leaving the presents under the tree. Often as kids, we'd leave a glass of milk out, as well as cookies, and maybe some carrots for those reindeer. But typically, when it comes to the tree lighting and everything like that, we typically put the star on last because to us, in my Christian belief, as well as this goes for Catholics as well and a few other religions, is that we use the day of Christmas to celebrate the birth of Jesus. It's a remembrance of his birth. Christmas is actually celebrated all over the world, and many countries have amazing traditions. I love hearing about Spain because they actually celebrate it by the three wise men and things like that. I don't know as much as what other countries do about their traditions, but I find it fascinating when I listen to hear other stories in other regions.
My favorite part about Christmas is, of course, getting of all the gifts. I love it for the reason that all of your friends and family actually send you happy Christmas cards as well as gifts from around the country and the world, in our case. It's also special because we deck up the entire house with the lights. And the worst part about Christmas is, of course, when Christmas ends about January 15th or so, when we actually decide to take down our tree and all the decorations. That's probably the worst part because now you're officially ending the festival and it's not good for us.
I'd have to say both holidays are very similar when it comes to having family, lights, and gifts. But when it comes to Christmas, I would have to say the best part is being with the family and the gifts, especially giving them. I really love going out shopping and giving gifts to all my family, especially this year because I have my first niece in the family, and I think I'm over spoiling her a bit this year. I'd have to say my least favorite part of the holiday sometimes was when we actually had the family get-togethers. It wasn't the family in general, it's when the cousins actually join up and gang up against each other in some games. Often this was playing pool or anything else, or maybe locking out on the patio too. We like celebrating the holidays on the days that they are originally celebrated on. But when it comes to a family matter, we want this to be a specific break in between each other. So that way, the kids, when we have them in the future, can understand and respect fully both traditions of the holidays. We want our kids to be able to enjoy the 5 days of Diwali with all the lights and food and festivities, especially when we take them to India at some point as they get older. And when it comes to Christmas, we definitely want them to be able to celebrate in both regions of India and the US.
Like I said before, Christmas was something that I celebrated because I was in Catholic school for the first 10 grades growing up. And then Diwali is again something I celebrated because I was and I am a Hindu from a Hindu family. So there was nothing different that I did when it came to American Christmas or holiday celebrations. But I think my wife Charis can answer better as to how she adapted to Diwali.
Actually, a lot of our friends were really curious about this, as well as my coworkers and family. So, when we started approaching this and trying to explain it to them, we actually decided to make a YouTube video to explain it to everyone. And I actually love just being able to share the link and send it to my friends who also need to share it to their friends. Especially living in the Bay Area, we have a little area down towards Fremont that we call Little India. There's a lot of Indians there, so definitely in the Bay Area, there's a lot of Indians, and they have a lot of friends who might not understand what Diwali is when it comes to their coworkers around them. So this video actually helps a lot of people out because we can actually just share it with them and they can share it to their family. So I was able to help my curiosity by learning all this and help others when I created this video. And I hope that others have learned from it if you get the chance to watch it.
I honestly think being open and embracing other people's cultures or traditions is the best way to approach a new festival or a new way of celebration. Having an open mind and having the capacity to accept someone's differences or difference of opinion or a different way of celebration for that matter is very important, and I think that is the key for our relationship as well, where I embrace parts of her culture or parts of the difference in celebration when it comes to an American Christmas versus an Indian Christmas that I've celebrated, as well as she does the same with our Diwali and the whole Hindu aspect of the cultural festivities when it comes to our festival of Diwali. So, being open and embracing each other's cultural differences and accepting them is the big key for this whole scenario.
So, if you want to learn more about our relationship as well as our adventures, we actually do have a YouTube channel where we explained as earlier that we did have a video on Diwali. But if you'd like to find us on YouTube, you can find us at I Am Naidu, and that's Naidu. Just type it in on YouTube. We're about the only channel that has that name. You can also find us on Instagram with the same name, or you can type in the I Am Naidu 007. Either way, you should be able to find us. Just look for the couple that has the horse or with the cricket pictures on there. And we also do have a contact on Facebook. And if you go through our Facebook of I Am Naidu, you can find our link to our written blog that has more articles and in-depth stories of our adventures across our travels, as well as our up and coming series of our travels through India. This will include a segment of an Indian marriage, which is actually our up and coming Hindu wedding. So if you're interested in learning more about the culture of India as well as how they actually go about with this 3 to 5 day wedding, we do have that series coming up in 2020. Thanks for listening to us, and thank you for inviting us to be on this podcast. We greatly appreciate it. It was a pleasure being able to speak and talk a bit about Diwali and Christmas. Thank you.
This was super interesting. I learned a ton. I did not know much about Diwali, and I heard about this holiday tradition just since I moved to America. And I really love the firecracker tradition. It reminds me of 4th of July, since we don't really have anything like that in Hungary. Buying clothes for family members, getting sweets for neighbors, that's something I can relate to. I feel like in Hungary we also would mainly focus on buying clothes for as a present for Christmas. You guys talked about celebrating goddess, which really reminded me of all the Greek goddesses. I don't know if you say goddesses. All the Greek goddess that we learned at school when I was younger. And it was just really interesting to learn about these Indian traditions. Cheris, you have mentioned that you're really interested about other cultures and how other people celebrate Christmas. Well, in Hungary, we also celebrate the birth of Jesus. We don't even have Santa. So I hope that you will check out the episode 9 where I share more about these traditions and the beliefs. Mahi was mentioning that he really loves all about sending and receiving Christmas cards. And this was also something for me that was a very interesting experience when I moved to America, that I would just constantly get cards from people that I didn't even know, family members, friends, and it was just such a nice thing and a nice tradition that I really enjoyed. You know, I kept all the cards as a memory and I was just really cherishing each of them. And my last comment is I am super excited about this 3-day long Indian wedding that you guys will be featuring and recording. So I will definitely be following these series, and I'm sure that a lot of the listeners will be doing the same thing. Okay, up next, we have Lolita talking about the Jewish holiday Hanukkah and the Russian New Year celebration.
Hi, my name is Lolita, and I'm originally from what used to be known as USSR, from Uzbekistan. We left back in 91, right before the fall of the USSR, and moved to Israel, where I lived for 4 years and ended up here in the United States in the state of Arizona. My family is still in Israel. We didn't celebrate many Jewish traditions when I was growing up, as Uzbekistan was a mainly Muslim country. Today I will tell you a little bit about the winter holiday Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a Jewish holiday which celebrates the victory of the Maccabees over the larger Syrian army. It's also celebrated a miracle that happened during this time, where just days' supply of oil allowed the menorah in the rededicated temple in Jerusalem to remain lit for 8 days. During Hanukkah, we eat jelly-filled donuts, which are called sufganiyot, and they are very delicious. During the 8 days of Hanukkah, we light candles to remember the oil that lasted for 8 days. We light the first candle on the first night of Hanukkah, and we put them in the menorah or the candelabra, which is called Hanukkah. And some people also do gifts for their children, either 8 small gifts, one for each day, or sometimes they decide to do a one large gift on the last day of Hanukkah. My traditions changed a little as I moved to Arizona, as I said earlier, and I married a man of a different religion. But we make it work, and we celebrate both religions and different traditions that come with them. So in our family, we still celebrate Hanukkah, but we do just one gift for our child. But we also go to a Christian church together and go to a Jewish synagogue on high holidays together as well. I feel like my child gets the best of both worlds as she learns about her origin and also her current life as we celebrate, like I said, both traditions. Hanukkah a lot of times falls right around Christmas time, so it's extra exciting for our kid as she gets more presents than, say, a child that only celebrates Christmas. Our daughter believes in Santa. We go visit Santa in different locations, but she also loves going to Israel and learning about the culture and the language and everything that comes with it. I want to tell you also a little bit about a New Year celebration in Russia. It is a very big holiday. We put a Christmas tree, but it's not called a Christmas tree because we didn't celebrate Christmas. But in Russian, it's called yolka, which is translated as a Christmas tree. And we decorate it, and underneath we put a house slipper for the Santa to bring us a present, would then be put in the slipper. I know it sounds kind of strange, but it is super exciting for the kids. And I remember as a young child waking up in the morning and running to the tree to see what Santa brought me in my slipper. And usually you would get an orange and a small present. We also had a lot of festivals and children programs throughout the city and in our daycares and schools. We would all dress up as snowflakes or Santa's helper, which was his granddaughter in Russia. He traveled everywhere with his granddaughter. who was called Snegurочка in Russian, which is non-translatable into English. And all the kids would be singing and dancing, and Santa would be right in the middle of all of this, singing and dancing with all the kids, with his granddaughter. For New Year's also, people have big parties in their house and invite all their friends and family and have a big feast. Traditionally, we would have it's called a холодец in Russian, which is kind of like jellied meat if you translate it into English. We really liked it. We made it here a couple of times and shared it with our American friends, and they didn't really understand it and thought it was pretty strange to eat cold meat jellified. We thought it was kind of funny. There's also a dish that's called herring under a fur coat. It's pretty good, but Americans also don't understand this dish. I think that multicultural couples can definitely work well together if they really are open-minded and understand each other and understand about each other's differences and their traditions and work together as a whole, because you can have two different religions in one household and still be a happy family and really make it work as we do in our family. You can find me on Instagram under Hair with Love by _Lolita. I hope you enjoyed listening to a little bit of my story.
Okay, I have to admit that I don't know anybody personally who celebrates Hanukkah, so it was really interesting to listen about. And the only similarities that I noticed is the lighting of the candles each day. It just reminds me of Advent that we have. We light up 4 candles, one each Sunday leading up to Christmas. And also we have calendars, the Advent calendar, where each day our kids would get little gifts. And that also just reminded me of the Jewish traditions. Okay, so I might not know many people who celebrate Hanukkah, but I definitely had a lot of similarities about the Russian Christmas. Lolita was mentioning the house slippers where Santa brings presents and puts into it. It's just like we have December 6th when St. Nicholas Day, when he puts present into kids' boots. That's a separate holiday from Christmas, but I just love that similarity, and just it's so interesting how these holiday traditions are just so connected and relevant even though they are coming from different cultures. And I also think that the reason we have a lot of similarities because Hungary and Russia have a lot of history together. So, for example, in Hungary, Santa also has a helper, and his name is Krampus. We also give oranges as a gift. We also have smaller presents, for example, pajamas or underwear. And I also remember Santa coming to daycares and schools when I was little with the big bag, or I don't know what it's called, the big sack filled with just little presents for us to give. And we're actually doing this tradition in our Hungarian school here in Arizona, which is really fun to see all the kids being scared of Santa and being a little bit confused that how did he show up here and what he has to give them. But anyway, so it was really fun listening your story. And you mentioned this food, this traditional food that is jellied meat. We also have that. It's called kocsonya in Hungarian. It's very delicious. I haven't had that since I moved away from Hungary, which is like 13, 14, 15 years. And now you just made me want to have some. So maybe I'll look up some recipes and try to make it. So I really enjoyed listening and discovering all of these similarities that we have with Lolita. So now let's hear Petronella's story about her journey from Uganda to the States and how the constant moving shaped the way she celebrated Christmas with her family.
So, my name is Petronella Lugemwa. I live in the New Jersey, New York area, and I am the creative director and owner of Petronella Photography, which is a wedding and marriage proposal studio that specializes in helping multicultural couples celebrate their love in a modern way. And if you can't already tell, absolutely love what I do. Love that I get to, every wedding is the opportunity to tell a very meaningful story and honor people's traditions, their heritage, their identity. I love it, and I'm blessed to work with an incredible team who make it all come to life. So absolutely love that. So if you couldn't already tell by my name, I was born in Uganda, Kampala, Uganda, grew up in Zimbabwe and then Birmingham, Alabama, and since then have lived in at least 11, yes, that's right, 11 different cities worldwide for so many reasons, including political turmoil. I was born at a time when there's a lot of turmoil with the dictator Idi Amin. And so my family moved to Kenya where my sister's born. Then we moved to Zimbabwe and all the bunch of different countries and cities in between there. So all of that to say that the way that shaped how we celebrated Christmas. So how we celebrated was really shaped by where we were, the community, and how they celebrated in the culture we were immersed in. I remember Christmas growing up was all about Father Christmas. So Father Christmas is like Santa Claus in America, the big guy with a red suit and a white beard, or that's how I remember it. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that Uganda was colonized by the British. And so a lot of how they celebrated Christmas sort of became how we celebrate. There are a lot of intermixing of cultures and traditions and all of that. So I remember that. I remember gifts. They weren't like the thing. Like it was just like, you got a gift. It was great. But what we would do is we would celebrate midnight mass. I was raised Catholic, and then come home and you come home to gifts, couple gifts, nothing big or crazy that Father Christmas had delivered. And it was like, oh my gosh, he came. It's awesome. And what I remember most is there would always be a lot of food, like overabundance. Everyone was in a good mood. There's just a lot of joy. I remember our family would always do a dance party, almost like we'd play all kinds of music and everyone would get up and dance and celebrate. It was just such a joyous time. In terms of food, there were a couple of things which are a little bit different. In Uganda, matoke is like a big deal. So what matoke is, it's a green banana that has been boiled, and then you mash it up and it becomes this starchy, not sweet, it's kind of bland, but it's sort of like mashed potatoes or grits, or I'm losing the word for exactly, but it's sort of like a mash. You sort of put stew on it, and my mom would make a peanut stew, which is very, very common in Uganda. You make a peanut stew. Sometimes you might put in some type of meat, maybe anchovies or beef or chicken, whatever you wanted in there, or just keep it plain, just peanut stew, nothing else, but really, really nice simmered. She would grind the peanuts, and she had like a grinder, and that was a part of what Christmas meant to me. She'd grind them up. There would be a meat stew, there'd be peanut stew, there'd be matoke, lots of vegetables, yam. I also remember we would get in the car or walk around the neighborhood and just look at the lights. And that's just sort of what Christmas meant. It just meant a time to be with family and to be with loved ones and to celebrate, and just everyone was just in a good mood. So that's how I remember it. So my advice, based on how I grew up and the fact that I grew up sort of all over the world and we sort of picked different elements of what was going on around us, I would have the same recommendation for other multicultural couples or families. And that would be sort of decide and discuss what holidays are most meaningful to you, what traditions, what foods, all of that, and then incorporate that and make it your own. And if there's something that you want to make your own, like we're just going to start this new tradition and do things this way, doing that, because there's no right or wrong way to celebrate. As our world becomes increasingly multicultural, I think it's so awesome and so fabulous to take little elements here and there of things that you love about one culture and sort of bring them together with another and create a new culture. So that's a little bit about me. The best place to find me and see all of the Petronella photography work is on Instagram. Go to Petronella Photography, or online website by Petronella, or petronellaphotography.com are both great places to go. And the way you spell Petronella is Petronella. I also host a podcast and a community where we share stories about the multicultural experience, and you can find more information about it on Instagram at I am multicultural. So grateful for this opportunity, Edit. Thanks for having me, and I hope this was helpful, enlightening, or just fun to listen to. Bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Petronella, for being part of this special episode. I hope that you guys like these little comments that I put after each segment. I'm not trying to pull out things that are important or not important. I just find some similarities as I was listening the stories, and it just makes me want to share with you guys. So, Petronella mentioned that they used to go to midnight mass or mesh. I think I'm saying it wrong. Anyway, to the church at midnight. And we also did this. And that was a really special time because I remember snowing and being very cold. And I remember that we would go to the church and it would be filled with people that we couldn't even get in. We would just maybe have to stay at the door. But there were just a lot of people walking on the streets and then going back home and enjoying the snow. And it was dark and really late. And especially when we were young, it was exciting because we were able to stay up late. I also remember having a lot more food than gifts. I don't know. I got to think as you were talking that maybe gifts weren't so meaningful or important in our mind because we got was clothing, which wasn't really exciting for us. So I mostly remember eating food with my family and sitting at the table and everybody just talking and having a good time. You mentioned looking at Christmas lights, which I also wanted to comment on because it wasn't really a thing when I was growing up. I don't really remember Christmas lights, people decorating their houses or the streets as much. So when I moved to America, it was really fun for me, and it still is, to go out, walk in a neighborhood or get in a car and drive around and see beautiful lights. Some of them are overdone, and it's just really fun to experience this because it is something for me that I did not have when I was little. We actually had Christmas fairs where we had little shops and you could buy little Christmas gifts and presents, a lot of food and drinks, hot wine and gingerbread cookies and bagli, which is a Hungarian cookie thing. So I think for Hungarians it was mostly about getting out of the house and going and being part of these little fairs and gathering together with your families and having fun with your friends. I love how Petronella was talking about taking little elements out of your traditions and make it your own, and just pick the parts that you love and create your complete new tradition that's tailored to your family. And I think that one of our tradition that is like that, one of my favorite parts of the Christmas is on Christmas Eve is usually when baby Jesus, brings some presents to the girls. And we actually, the way we put this under the tree, because when I was growing up, the kitchen used to be a separate room. So for my parents, it was pretty easy to sneak in back in the living room and put some presents under the tree while we were eating. But now it's harder to do because these homes these days are all the big area is all together and the tree is right where we're eating. So I didn't really know how I can follow up with this tradition and keep up with it as it was for my childhood. So my husband and I came up with this idea that my dad actually told me a story when he was little, that he used to hear these little jingle bell outside, and then he would run out in the snow, and they would say, "Oh, baby Jesus is here, go find him." And he would run out, and then when he would come back in the house, there would be the presents under the tree. So the way we modified this a little bit and put the American traditions in it is that we would tell the girls that, oh, we see Santa flying above our house with the reindeers, and let's go outside and put some oat, sprinkle it around our backyard, and leave some carrots for the reindeers so they can find our house. And they're really excited to run out and sprinkle that all over the backyard. So that's when I have a little time to put the presents quickly under the tree. And then my husband would ring the bell, so the jingle bell, and they would turn around and try to find Santa or Jesus, whatever they're thinking about, because we're just still trying to combine these two significant figures that present Christmas for our kids, and that's how they discover their way back to the house, to the living room, and see the presents, and they open it up. So I feel like that's a really good way to combine our Hungarian Christmas and American Christmas. And we've been doing this now for over, I think this is going to be our 10th year that we're doing this. So I'm sorry, this was a little bit long. I just got carried away and too excited. Anyway, so my next guest is Nivea. She is from India. She lives in the United States. And Nivea is going to tell us about how she remembers celebrating Christmas while growing up in a Hindu household, and all the traditional differences that she learned once she started dating her American partner.
Hi, my name is Nivi. I was born in South India in a city called Hyderabad. I moved to the United States when I was about a year old. I can tell you a little bit about the holidays that I grew up celebrating and how that's sort of transformed over the years, and how I've seen another side to it once I started dating someone outside my culture and religion and ethnicity. So I grew up mostly in California, although I lived in a few other states when I was younger. My family moved around a lot. I think in those first years, we did celebrate Christmas. I was way too young to remember it. My mom tells me I was scared of Santa. So that was probably something I didn't look forward to a lot. But growing up, as long as I can remember, my family and I celebrated Christmas. We didn't celebrate it religiously since I come from a Hindu family. I think it was more of an exciting American thing that we sort of saw. And I attended a lot of Christian and Catholic schools growing up, I think, for like preschool and kindergarten. And that meant that, Christmas was like a huge thing in classrooms. What I do remember, and I have videos of me as a kid, is all of the schools that I went to would put on a holiday concert. And so I don't remember the first few, but the videos look like I'm having a lot of fun in my little checkered uniform singing about Santa. But the earliest memory that I have of one of those is actually they taught us a bunch of like Santa, Rudolph, reindeer songs, and they also gave us choreography. I think that's when I realized for the first time that I'm not so good at dancing, but it was a lot of fun. And I think the way my family celebrates Christmas probably stems a lot from just me being overly enthusiastic about random traditions. I think the biggest thing that makes Christmas like a distinct experience for me is that in addition to the fun stuff like the tree decorating and presents and stockings, I associate Christmas and also all other major holidays with Indian food. Since my family's Indian, my mom's an excellent cook. Instead of having like turkey and mashed potatoes or pie or whatever, we would always have like a giant Indian meal. Mostly it would be just our family, maybe aunts and grandmothers and grandfathers and cousins. But sometimes we would invite over friends, and it was just like a really fun way to gather and celebrate this tradition and also eat Indian food. I think when I was growing up, I'm sure there was a few times when I complained like, "Oh, why can't we have mashed potatoes or whatever?" But looking back, it's just like my version of a Christmas feast was like having paneer and having like heaping servings of Indian food, and definitely no regrets whatsoever about that. A couple of years ago, like 2-ish years ago, I started dating someone who is Christian. He's a Seventh-day Adventist. His name is Ben. And so I can share basically my first Christmas that we celebrated at his house and at my house. So I think I went to his place around around Christmas Eve. And obviously, like being like a white American Christian, his like the food scene was different, the relative scene was different, and like I guess I just didn't expect the holiday to be so different since I did grow up celebrating Christmas. But I think they have like more hard and fast traditions than we do. Their family, I think on Christmas Eve has a soup dinner. That's like something that they do. And then on Christmas Day, my family would usually like sit everyone down around a table and, as I mentioned, eat a lot of Indian food. And, we'd like eat with our hands and sit at the table for hours afterwards, get into arguments as usual. His family, I don't know if this was just that year or every year, but it was sort of more like open-ended buffet style. Had a lot of foods that I honestly have never eaten. One of them was like biscuits. I don't remember where they were from, but they were like cheddar jalapeno biscuits. They were delicious. And so yeah, that was like the first thing that I remember being very distinct is like the way we consumed food and like the types of food that we consumed was like radically different. I wish I brought my own hot sauce because I don't eat a lot of spicy food. Another thing that really threw me off, and over the past 2 years I've gotten a lot better at this, is that they say grace before meals. And so my first Christmas that year when I was celebrating it at his house, we were all just like gathered around in various corners of the house. And suddenly and slowly, the room just started to fall silent. And I was sort of the last person to stop talking. And when I finally did, I realized that everyone was just like listening to one person saying grace. And that was like a little embarrassing for me because I just totally did not pick up on the cue. It's just something that I've never participated in before or experienced before. And so now I know in future holidays to look out for people saying grace. We never went to church for it, but we did go to a holiday concert that was like different than the ones that I've experienced as a kid because I wasn't part of it. It was fun, but it was just like a very interesting time for me to experience like so many religious undertones to an obviously religious holiday, but I guess I just never been part of it, and I never really even thought of Christmas as a Christian holiday, which might sound silly, but I just grew up celebrating it as something you do and something that's fun instead of something that is religious. The really funny part of that year's Christmas was probably when Ben and I went back to my aunt's house to celebrate it with my family. Our presents scene was also totally different. Back at Ben's house, the Christmas tree is like overflowing with presents at the base. It's like their big holiday time of the year. And so I just like never in my life seen presents, first of all, in so much abundance. Like there's not that many people in his family, but the number of presents was like overflowing, and like the quality of presents was amazing. At my house, it's usually just like clothes. And especially like as we've all grown up over the years, it's become less and less. So that was one thing. And having to bring him to my house and be like, okay, here, you get a box of chocolates, was a little interesting. And then the other thing that was really hilarious to me is my grandmother, as I mentioned, we have a lot of Indian food during all holidays. She kept trying to serve him Karela, which is bitter gourd. It's something that I absolutely hate. And I was just like very shocked that she wanted to serve it to my poor white boyfriend, his first time ever celebrating a holiday with our family. But he got used to it. He figured out what stuff to eat with his hands. He, didn't make a fuss. My family kept trying to ask him if the food was too spicy. And it was just like really, really hilarious to me to watch this kind of like Christmas discomfort around Indian food. But it made the holiday very, very interesting. I am definitely very lucky to have a family and friends that are open to learning and adapting holiday traditions. Like recently for Thanksgiving, we did sort of like an American fusion type thing. We didn't leave out the Indian food at all. We just added other stuff like spaghetti squash and, I can't remember what else. I think instead of mashed potato, we had like fried potatoes, Indian style. And so, like, my favorite thing about being with a partner of a different ethnicity, of a different culture, and of a different religion is that we get to share each other's holidays. And even for this holiday that we both technically have always celebrated, it's just like been a really cool fusion of getting these ideas of like, what can I take from both of our families going forward, and what can he take from my family going forward. I think the biggest takeaway for him is the food is way better at my house. Sorry, Ben. And so I think it's just like fantastic to not only have like different holidays that you celebrate together as a couple, but also figure out how to combine existing traditions and really make it your own. And so I think in my ideal world, what I would want to take from Ben's family is the abundance of presents. That is just like awesome. And then from my family, definitely the food. And so I would keep those two things going forward and celebrating Christmas. Again, my name is Nivea Chanta. You can reach out to me anytime. I actually run a media platform called Soapbox Project that you can find at soapboxproject.org. And that's the place where my podcast on education is housed too. It's called Get Schooled. And again, it's housed by Soapbox Project. And so you can find me talking about education, environment, gender, and other social issues at soapboxproject.org. All of my email and contact info is on there as well. Thank you.
Nivea, I honestly have to tell you that I never really thought that I would find so many relatable things in a culture that is so far from mine, but I really did. I don't know, maybe that's because we live in another country, in another culture, so our habits and traditions come out a little bit stronger, and we find similarities in other cultures, and we feel like, oh, they get me, or they don't get me, or I start missing this other thing, just because that culture that we live in doesn't have it. Okay, I have a lot of things that I want to comment to this, but I don't want to make it too long. So first of all, I think it's funny that you said that you were scared of Santa. I think a lot of kids are, and it's just so funny how it just kind of stays in our mind even after we grow up. And the other thing I wanted to mention, that I totally get this being excited to experience American traditions or American habits, or just noticing what people do here. You mentioned that at school you were learning Christmas songs, and I feel like this would be a longer conversation, so I don't really want to get into it, but I am actually really upset that they don't do this anymore, at least in public schools. And I know that you mentioned that you were part of a Christian school, so that's probably why, I'm guessing. But I really wish that my kids would learn some Santa songs or sing about Christmas at school and just be embracing this holiday. Unfortunately, these days, with people being so scared or sensitive about what they say, how they say it, not being respectful or open minded to other religions or other cultures. And when I was growing up, I learned a lot of songs about Jesus, although I don't practice the religion. But when it comes to Christmas, it's just something that it's part of this tradition. It's something that it's part of this holiday. We go to Hungarian school here, and we have a lot of songs about Jesus and Santa and everything that comes with this history. And our children are learning about it and asking questions, and I'm happy to answer them. But I still think that Christmas as a tradition should stay alive at schools just as it should. They should embrace other holiday traditions, just like I am doing it here on a podcast. I think that us being open-minded and trying to learn about other cultures instead of not being allowed to celebrate a specific culture, especially if you have students who attend at that school and they would love to learn about these. If somebody would want to learn about Hungarian traditions, or I don't know, sing some Hungarian songs, which I don't think they would, but that's a silly example. But anyway, what I'm trying to say, that I would be more happy if they would be interested about the culture because they have a student who is Hungarian, instead of just generalizing and trying to call it a winter holiday celebration that doesn't really mean anything. Like, I would love to specifically learn about the holidays that people celebrate this time of the year, and that was the idea and a purpose for this episode also. And I think that a lot of you listening will learn a lot more about different holidays and be more open-minded and think like, oh yeah, I didn't really think that this group of people or culture does this specific thing, and now I'm really interested about it. Anyway, going down a tangent again, even though I said I don't want to. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, before I move on, I just need to highlight this one more thing that really cracked me up when I was listening Nivea talking about, and that is how we differently consume food. And thank you so much for explaining this in such a great way. This is just something I was trying to tell my husband and tell my family at home who never been in America. How funny it really is that we just consume food differently. We also sit at the table, we have long conversations, and it's funny because in my husband's family, it's more like a buffet style dining with paper plates, and we're watching games or a movie or something. And so it's just so interesting to me that how in different cultures, even if you move to a new country for, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years, the habits is something that will never change. With your family, you are continuing doing the same things no matter what you eat, no matter where you are, what other people you have around you. Habits is just something that stays with you forever. And thank you so much for clarifying this to me. I really enjoyed this part, that I was able to relate to this and just feel that I am not alone. And I would never think that somebody from another culture would have same feelings or same experiences. And same with the quantity of presents. When I had my first Christmas, American Christmas, at my husband's parents' house, I never seen that many presents in my life. That they had in a living room under the tree. Nothing even fit under the tree. It just the whole living room was covered. And just like you said, when I was younger, I would just get a pajama or orange or a chocolate or something, maybe a little toy. And so it's funny that when my parents are here for Christmas, I always feel a little bit weird that they gonna get to my husband is just not gonna what's the word I'm looking for? Not gonna be equal as the American traditions when it comes to giving presents and gifting each other. All right, next up, I'd like to welcome Anissa, who is going to share her experience living in the Middle East. And if you have never heard about Eid, keep listening. Anissa will also share her journey celebrating different holidays with her Christian partner.
Hi everyone, my name is Anissa, or you may better know me as Expat Panda, which is the name of my blog and my Instagram account. It's such a privilege to be invited to speak on this podcast, and I'm so excited to hear all the other perspectives and share my own today. So just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from South Africa, and for the past couple of years I've been living in the Middle East. I lived in Kuwait for 1 year, and then I've been living in the United Arab Emirates for about 2.5 years. When I was first approached to talk about this topic, I didn't really know what to say, because celebrations in the United Arab Emirates, or in general the Middle East, are so diverse, and there's so many aspects to consider. So I'm going to try my best to condense all the information for you into this short segment that I have. So I'm currently living in Dubai, which is probably the most famous city in the Middle East region. And I teach grade 3 students here at a private school. So from the time I moved to the Middle East, I've been a teacher, and I've always been teaching in different schools around the region. So we're talking about winter holidays in this podcast, and this makes me giggle a little bit, because winter here is not the snowy white winter that you see in the movies. Winter here is very sunny. It's a lot of beach days. It's a lot of outdoor barbecues. It's actually the time when the city comes alive, because people can now venture outdoors and do outdoor activities. You have to remember that for the majority of the year, we're dealing with 40 degrees Celsius temperatures. So it's scorching. I mean, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's probably super, super hot. And the only time that we're really able to kind of spend time outdoors and away from the air-conditioned rooms that we live in is during the November to March period. So you've got to cram a whole lot of events and a whole lot of activities into these few months of the year. Now, winter here is not particularly characterized by a specific holiday. So I'm just going to talk in general about the national holidays here and how certain expats celebrate their specific holidays. So the holiday that I grew up celebrating is Eid. Eid is basically the Islamic version of Christmas. That's the most simplified explanation I can give you. There's two Eids. Eid al-Fitr is the Eid that happens after Ramadan, which is the fasting period. So it's a time for feasting, it's a time for food, getting together with family, and just celebrating the end of the fasting period. And then there's Eid al-Adha, which is the Eid of sacrifice, where people sacrifice certain animals. And it's also a time for feasting, and it's also a time for getting together with family. In general, both of these holidays or days of significance are very family orientated. Since I moved to the Middle East, I have to say that I've not been very consistent in celebrating these days of significance the way I would have celebrated them if I was in my home country of South Africa, and that's primarily because I live really far from my family. And when we have holidays here for Eid, it's usually 5 to 6 day holidays, which usually means that most people, including myself, choose to travel out of the region during this time. And this year, my partner and I went to the Seychelles during the Eid holiday, and we had a lovely time. I would definitely not be doing that if I was still living in South Africa. But, you know, being an expat here, it's a very isolating experience during the holiday periods, and getting out of the country, going away on a trip, it really helps. Because you're so far away from your family, it's almost impossible to celebrate the way you would if you were back home, in inverted commas. Eid is a very joyous time in general here. Lots of sales, everybody's off work, and it's very festive in terms of the decorations in the stores and things like that. So it's a nice time if you are here, but as I said, most people do choose to travel out. Another misconception, or a misconception I want to talk about, is that people think that any non-Islamic celebrations are forbidden here in the Middle East, but specifically in the UAE, this is so far from the truth. So there's a high population of Indian expats here in the UAE. So Diwali is also a huge celebration that takes place usually around the November time period, which is when winter is just starting. I know there's another speaker talking more about Diwali, but I just want to say that there's so many different events that go on here that if you had no idea about Diwali or what Diwali was about, you could definitely learn a lot just from attending the different events here in the UAE. There's a huge spirit of tolerance, a huge spirit of harmony and unity between the people who live here, because there's so many different nationalities. So it's really possible to learn about different festivals and different days of significance for different religions, which is one of the reasons that I really enjoy living here. People also think that there's no such thing as Christmas here, which is so far from the truth. It really is. You just walk into any grocery store right now, any store at all, any mall, and there's huge Christmas decorations, there's Christmas specials, Christmas music on the radio station. I'm sure you wouldn't expect that if you came here, but yeah, it's here, it's happening. There's a huge community of Christian people here, lots of churches. So Christmas is a big deal here. We have school holidays during this time, and a lot of people do travel to their native countries to go back and spend Christmas with their families. Or if you're not Christian, then you could also go on a trip during this time if you had leave to visit a new country. As I said before, some people feel very isolated being here, and getting out of the country during the holiday period does help them. But yeah, I just feel like people have this misconception that like things that are un-Islamic are not allowed here, or that if you talk about Christmas, you'll be arrested, or there's no tolerance for other faiths. But actually, it's a really open and really peaceful and harmonious society to live in. And I've been exposed to so many different and diverse people here, and I've learned so much about so many holidays and days of significance. Just to bring in the intercultural aspect for myself, so my partner is someone who grew up celebrating Christmas, and we try to do something small, even if it's just the two of us, because again, we're away from our families, especially his family, which lives all over the globe. So we try to just share a meal together. If we can go on a trip together, we would. But again, it wouldn't be the big family celebration of getting together for lunch or exchanging presents and things like that. But if you did have a family here, if you did have kids, then that would be something that would be completely fine. So he's been learning a lot about Eid, and I've been learning a lot about Christmas, and past couple of years that we've been together have been an education for us both. I think the best part about living here, as I said before, is definitely the exposure to so many different faiths, so many different religions, so many different kinds of cuisines and traditions, you know. I really enjoy learning about these kind of things, and it's really broadened my horizons and opened my eyes about these things. I know I didn't talk about anything specific, like any specific traditions that I do, but it's because I haven't adopted any yet. Still kind of navigating my way to finding out how I really want to celebrate these kind of occasions. Mostly I've just been holidaying, which is not a bad way to spend these days. Highly recommended if you can afford a vacation to take one. But yeah, still navigating my way through the intercultural relationship and still learning about each other and still enjoying this phase that we are in before we settle on our traditions and what we want to do. So yeah, if you have any more questions about living in the Middle East or about any specific celebrations that go on here, feel free to message me. You can find me on Instagram at expatpanda, or you can just search for my blog expatpanda.com. That's EXPATPANDA. I hope that you enjoyed learning about my time here in the Gulf, and I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, just feel free to send them to me.
Anissa, I can totally relate to you when you say that it's finally the weather is nice, but it's not as cold as you see it in the movies. Here in Arizona, where I live, it's definitely like 20 Celsius. And thank you for talking in Celsius because I also don't know Fahrenheit. So it is a beautiful weather here in Arizona too, and we really love it because finally we can go on a bike ride or go and do something fun because we just been locked in a house, in air conditioned buildings throughout the whole summer. So I can totally relate to you, although I have to say that I do miss some snow and white, that typical white Christmas that I grew up with and I see in movies to have. But we have a few hours drive up north and then we get some snow. So if we really crave it, we can thankfully do that. But I would not complain about this weather because it's great now. And thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and experiences and just the way you live your life currently. We also live far away from our family, but since we have kids, it keeps us motivated and excited about being consistent with our traditions and me cooking some holiday food that I want my children to remember. But I think if it would be just my husband and I, we would definitely do what you're doing, just traveling around and having fun and going out to eat and just do whatever we like. And I don't even want to start with this because I'm so jealous of you that you get to do all of that. And not that I don't like being with my family, but sometimes we wish we could have more free time when it's just the two of us. But it is the holidays, they are about family time and being far from my family and not being able to celebrate my holiday traditions in my country. It definitely makes it a little bit harder, but we do the best. And I think that over the years, you just kind of get used to that, right? You just accept it. We do a lot of FaceTime, and my mom would send presents in the mail. So we kind of make it work. And a couple of years ago, my parents were able to be here for Christmas. So I think that I just had that opportunity, and I'm just grateful for that. Also, thank you for talking about Eid. I did not know anything about this holiday celebration, so I'm really grateful to have you on this podcast and talk about it a little bit. You definitely made me want to move to Dubai. It just sounds so much fun and interesting to to be in contact with so many different cultures and traditions and religions and just people and cuisine. So, yep, definitely loved everything that you shared and just made me excited to to go and travel there. Even if it's just for a holiday, I think it would be fun to experience. All right, guys, we are on to our last guest today, and she is one of my dear friends here in Arizona. Her name is Diana. She is Romanian. Also, I would like to say a quarter Hungarian because her grandpa is Hungarian or was Hungarian. So I wanted to invite her so she can talk a little bit about her Orthodox Christmas traditions and how she adopted some of the American traditions over the past 14 years.
Hello, my name is Diana Angelus, and I am originally from Romania in southeastern Europe. I am actually from Transylvania, which every time I tell somebody where I come from, they think about Dracula. I moved to the United States 14 years ago, and since then I have spent all my holidays here. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a makeup artist. In my religion, which is Orthodox, we are celebrating Easter and Christmas. But since we are in December, I will talk about some of our Christmas traditions. I remember as a child, I was so excited about Christmas because I was always thinking about Santa Claus that is going to bring me the Christmas tree, but also a lot of presents. I am the only child to my parents, which unfortunately they got divorced when I was 8 years old. I grew up just with my mom, and even though she was a single parent, she never made me feel like something is missing. What I have noticed when I moved to the United States is that everybody is decorating their houses and inside starting end of November or beginning of December. In Romania, we were only having our tree up right before Christmas Eve. I always liked to believe in Santa. I think I was 14 years old when I finally accepted that my mom was the one putting the tree up. My mom was the one putting the presents under the tree. I was actually very disappointed, but what can we do? Many times as I was growing up, my mom was telling me to behave well because Santa is watching. He is passing by our window, and if I am not a good girl, he is not going to bring too many presents. After I was getting the presents from my mom, at my house, I was going to my cousins and to my grandparents because I knew there was something there waiting for me as well. Another beautiful tradition that I remember and I really miss is that me and my friends or classmates, we were gathering the Christmas Eve night and we were going to each of us house to sing Christmas carols. We were walking in the town because I'm from a small town which has maybe a little over 20,000 people. So we were walking to each other's houses and we were singing, and their parents was giving us sweets. Some were giving us food, but we were like already so stuffed that by the end, when we were stopping at the last person, we couldn't really get anything. On the other hand, a lot of kids, they were knocking on the doors asking if they can sing some Christmas carols, expecting some food or even money in exchange. All that you could hear during that night were the Christmas carols on the streets. The most popular dish in Romania during the winter holidays are sarmale, which means stuffed cabbage. My mom is an expert in cakes, so every time Christmas was around, she was baking close to 10 pieces. They were laying everywhere in the house. I miss those times. For the past 14 years, Christmas was not the same. This is also because I have been working every single year during this time of the year because of my job. I am not married and I have no kids. Otherwise, I think it would have been very hard to be away from them. It happened to me a few times before that I was getting home around 10-11 o'clock p.m. and then I had to work next day early in the morning. So the only time I had to prepare some food was nighttime. Many times I was going to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning just to make sure I have my specialties, especially the sarmale, ready for the holiday. Since my family is still in Romania, I had to do all this by myself. I am pretty good at food, but when it comes about baking cakes, oh, I wish my mom was here to cook those for me. Overall, I miss all the Christmas atmosphere from back home. The Christmas carols in our national language, where a lot of artists are traveling from town to town, having concerts, or TV stations and radio stations. They are playing a lot of this music. I like the American Christmas carols a lot as well, but just because I grew up in Europe, I feel the holiday a little more intense when I listen to the Romanian music, the Christmas carols. One thing I forgot to mention is that here in America, Christmas lasts for one day, December 25th. We in Romania, as Orthodox, we are celebrating it for 3 days, the 25th, 26th, and 27th. And we keep the tree until January 7th, where we celebrate Saint John the Baptist. Okay, I hope that many of you listening from Europe can relate to some of these traditions and memories. I definitely did. One of the things that I would like to highlight is that in Hungary, we also get the Christmas tree on Christmas Eve day, which was really funny for me here in America because I tried to do that in the first couple of years living here, and my husband kept telling me that you're not going to find a Christmas tree on Christmas Eve because they're going to sell it all by then or even just throw them out. But I didn't listen to him, and yes, sure enough, I was in trouble when Christmas Eve came. But we just have this tradition that the children would go out in the morning to the park or playground, or they would go to the farmers market, and while they're gone, parents would usually put the Christmas tree up in the living room and decorate it, and then they would say that
to the children that while you were gone, Jesus's angels, so angels brought the Christmas tree now to our living room, and then in the evening is when baby Jesus will come and bring presents. So that's, I think, a super cute tradition that we don't have here in America because many reasons. Like I said, you can just listen episode 9, so I don't have to get into it too much right now. But one of the things that we didn't have in Hungary is singing Christmas carols. And I think that's more kind of like an American tradition, or I don't know what it's originated from, but it sounds really fun and really sweet. And I can just hear, like you said, that you hear the songs throughout the streets that night. And that just sounds so beautiful. And I think if I remember it correctly, that's maybe used to be a tradition in America because I see it in the movies. I don't know why they don't do that anymore. I'll have to ask my husband. But I love that idea because it's so sweet. It kind of reminds me of Halloween when all the children are out on the streets and having fun and knocking on doors. Okay, you mentioned sarmale, which we call it sarma in Hungarian, and we also have that dish, but we have it instead of on Christmas, we have it on New Year's Eve day, especially because they say that soup is really good for a hangover, which means that on New Year's Eve night, most people drink a lot of alcohol and they just need something to calm their stomach. And sarma is a really good dish to eat after the New Year's Eve. That is also a tradition that I no longer follow, unfortunately. But I always ask my mom to make some sarma whenever I go home to Hungary. Diana was talking about how she enjoys and feels really emotionally connected to the Christmas holidays when she's listening Christmas songs in Romanian. And I find that really interesting because it really is true. Sometimes I have my Spotify list with Hungarian songs, but I don't really have like a Christmas version, which now I really want to make one. Whenever I'm driving and I feel sentimental or homesick, I would just play the Hungarian songs on Spotify, and it just helps so much. And love this idea, and I would definitely recommend to everybody, especially around the holidays, if you feel homesick, if you miss your family, to just play some songs and sing them, dance, whatever you have to do to, calm that homesickness in you. I love that idea. So after the recording, I talked with Diana and she told me that actually during those 3 days where she mentioned that they celebrate Christmas for 3 days, she said that you are not supposed to clean, wash clothes, or do any work, and that people usually would go to church and spend their time with their family. And this is interesting because I also remember going to my cousin's house on January 7th, since they are also celebrating the Orthodox Christmas. And they always had these huge feasts and celebration on that day. And it was just so nice to have something again with your family, like right after the big Christmas celebration, a week or two later, you just have another one, another reason to gather together, and love that. I think that's amazing when you have a culturally rich family and you have multicultural celebrations in your family or with your friends. It's just another excuse basically to get together and eat good food and hang out with your family and friends. Okay, guys, I know this is a very, very long episode, but it's supposed to be that way because it's a special one. It's a bonus one. You can basically treat it as 2 episodes in one, or you want to listen it as you are traveling to see our family or while you are cooking your holiday dishes. Thank you so much for listening to each of the stories. And I'd like to also thank all of you, all of my guests who participated, and for making this episode a very special one, a very culturally rich for all of us listening. I definitely learned a ton from you guys, and I really appreciate your time you spent to record your journeys with us. And those of you listening, please go to my blog or the show notes under this episode so you can check out each guest. The link is editvashadi.com/multicultural holiday celebrations, or just simply go to editvashadi.com/blog and you most likely gonna find the most recent post over it. Feel free to follow them on social media, send them a DM or email them if you have any questions about their traditions and holiday celebrations. And don't forget to subscribe to the Getting Married Multiculturally podcast. I would love to hear what you think about this podcast. So just hit the review button and let me know. One more thing. There's a ton more celebrations and holidays that we did not have time to include and talk about. But if you want to share your traditions, just DM me. I would love to hear about it, and maybe we can include it into next year's episode. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you would like to hear more about my holiday traditions, how we combined our Hungarian American holiday traditions, Christmas traditions, just go back to episode number 9. It's titled How We Blend Different Holiday Traditions Together. For those of you who are celebrating Christmas in a few days, Merry Christmas! If you have another celebration going on next week, or if you have nothing to celebrate, just excited to take some time off of work and school and spend it with your family and go on travelings, good for you. I wish for everyone that you all spend this time of the year, the end of the year, with whatever you want to, and you do whatever you wish to do. Also, there won't be an episode released next Friday, as we are taking a break from our computers and trying to spend as much time as we possibly can with our family and with our children. So with that, I would also like to wish you a happy new year, since I won't be talking to you until 2020, which is super excited. I cannot even believe that we're done with this year. But so anyway, I won't keep you here any much longer. And okay, bye for now. Sziasztok! Ho, 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 ho. Sorry, I had to do this.